Here we go.
Welcome back to the Merge Feast. My name is Brandon Johnson, along with Logan Hogmo.
What's up,
Blake
guys?
Hogmo is out this week. He will be back next week. Just a reminder, as always, we are now in video format. So if you prefer to listen to your podcasts on video versus audio, go check us out on YouTube. I will leave a link to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at the Merge Feast down in the show notes. So if you want to switch from audio to video, it'll be down there. I want to start a little bit differently than we typically do. We did get some mail.
Ooh, nice.
And our mail pertains to last week's episode. So I want to talk about that real quick before we dive into this week's show. If you want to email us and be featured on the show, email us at themergefeastpodcast@gmail.com. So this email is actually from my mom. So shout out, Mom.
Nice.
She was asking a question about the challenge last week. So obviously David and Joe broke the record for the Wrist Assured challenge at, I believe, 52 minutes was the record. They shattered Gabler's 39-minute record.
Was it 52 or was it 50? I was thinking it was 58.
Survivor Wiki had it at 52.
Okay, you got it. Sorry.
So her question was, since David had the record for the longest, holding the bucket the longest, just curious if Cedric broke the record for the shortest time.
What was his time?
So he does have the record for the shortest time in the challenge. It was 20 seconds. And it was very funny because he basically dropped the bucket before Jeff even finished his whole spiel. Like, he was out before it started, basically.
Yeah.
So yes, he has the record for the shortest time, and I don't think that it's even close.
No, I mean, I think everybody was shocked at that. Of like, you couldn't have held it longer than 20 seconds, but hey, it is what it is.
Yeah. So I mean,
Impressive.
yeah, you hold a record sometimes
In the wrong
way,
one. Yeah.
but you do have a record, so you live in Survivor lore for now.
And records are meant to be broken, so hopefully that one is broken eventually.
Yeah. Be great. That'd be insane. You'd almost have to be trying to break that record. But yeah, enough about that. Thank you for the email, Mom. So Logan, let's just get into this week. There's a lot to unpack. So what stuck out to you? What was kind of the best or most memorable moment for you this episode?
Yeah, like you said, this week was full of strategic and alliance talk and a lot there. But one of the funniest things for me that kind of just not necessarily made the episode, but made it better, was them sitting there around and saying, what would be the largest animal you could take on? And to hear some of the responses, I think it didn't pan to whoever said it, but I think Eva said a female deer, so a doe. Joe said a retired gorilla from the zoo.
I'm not messing with any gorilla, retired or not.
And then he was like, or like a pig. Like, that's fairly big difference, but
Pig.
okay. Kyle said a hyena. That one's a little questionable to me.
I've seen The Lion King.
Yeah. I mean, sure. Do you have one that you've thought of, Brandon?
So this is a tough question. I know it's hypothetical, but animals don't mess around. There's not a lot of animals that I feel like I could take on. I'm gonna sound like an idiot because I don't know. Like, I don't want to aim too high and be like, I could take on a lion, no problem.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like I liked Joe's answer of a pig, a small pig, because I've seen some pigs, man, and some of them, you're not moving that.
Yeah.
Maybe a goat. I think I could take a goat.
Okay.
I think I could take a goat. What
Cool.
about you?
So I was thinking the same thing, not wanting to go too big, and I had two things that popped into my mind instantly. One was a kangaroo, um, but the pause on that is obviously the claws and the kicking. My thought process behind it is obviously I'm 6'5", I've got a little bit of a reach, maybe do some boxing. Probably not going to happen. So my
I
next,
you've seen those videos of kangaroos. Some of them look like they just finished a prison sentence and are
absolutely.
absolutely
So
jacked.
let's say a small kangaroo. But then my next thought was like a horse. I would think I'd be able to take down a horse.
Yeah, you just I guess wouldn't want to be behind it.
Absolutely.
So
So being strategic there, but trying to think the largest. But I don't know. I do have to say, me and Sydney were actually talking about this, and she was trying to think of something, and she came up with a salmon.
that's it, huh?
That was it. So I hope she could take on bigger than that, but
Hey, I respect the humbleness.
I just thought that was quite funny. But did you have anything that really kind of stuck out to you there?
So I absolutely loved that question that was posed. So for me, I liked kind of the chaos post post challenge of, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but watching Kyle scramble to save Camilla without outing himself was truly fascinating, and I think he navigated that extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we'll probably find out more about what happened, but clearly it worked because Camilla is still here.
Mm-hmm.
But I loved all of the stuff happening at the end of or after the challenge.
It was definitely kind of refreshing. I mean, we hadn't really seen a ton of that up until this point this season, and it was nice of having some of that chaos. I agree.
So I want to start kind of at the beginning of this episode, and we'll talk about Chrissy a
Mm,
lot because she was obviously the one that got voted out tonight. We talked about her last week and how she kind of almost had some diarrhea of the mouth, was maybe oversharing a little bit at tribal
mm-hmm.
council. And first thing we see is her coming back and almost doing some damage control. I think knowing that, oh, I've said a little bit too much. I don't mean a lot of that. I was just trying to stir up the game and get some things going. What was your take on Chrissy there?
Exactly what you said, damage control. And I don't think her damage control, quote unquote, was actually damage control. I mean, you can say everything you want of like, don't say what I say at tribal personally, or I'm just saying things like you're saying those things for some reason, and just to come back and play it off like that, I don't think anybody took it seriously. And but absolutely just trying to do damage control, and obviously she's not here any longer, and she again had some word diarrhea, as you said, at tribal again. So I think she just got in her head and to the point of no return on that side of things, but definitely just damage control on that.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of stuff at tribal. I was going to save tribal to the end, but I think it'll kind of flow easily right here so we can keep it here.
Yeah.
Chrissy, throughout the episode, I don't want to say that she wasn't playing the game because she was definitely like throwing out names, but I feel like she was going about it the wrong way
Mm,
and almost doing most of her work at tribal rather than building foundations and relationships and doing, putting together the steps to make moves that should happen at tribal. Because if you're trying to make your move and trying to make your pitch at tribal, it's too late. And that seems
mm,
to be what she was doing last tribal and this tribal of we need to go after the honesty and integrity, the strong people. And I don't think she's wrong, but you got to lay that foundation sooner. You're not going to sway people at tribal. And I think that was her big downfall.
Yeah, I mean, you see her do that a little bit of, hey, we've got to cut the head off the snake and separate Joe and Eva and some of that, but it's not enough. She's not getting the people outside of that group saying, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
we have this duo, this issue. Eva's got the immunity idol. Let's try and blindside Joe. Let's get the numbers and
Mm-hmm.
work it that way." Like you said, building that foundation, because at tribal, at that point, people have somewhat most of the time made up their minds of who they're voting for. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, I think there is some validity to having to start voting out some of those guys if anybody else wants a shot. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with those guys forming that alliance. I mean, that you see that happen in other ways in other seasons,
What?
and that's what kind of in tribal with Chrissy and like, oh, it's just the guys teaming up. But and I thought David brought up a good point of like previous seasons, all the girls have aligned, or the people that are really good at
Mm-hmm.
puzzles are strategic, and I don't know. It was an interesting tribal for sure.
Yeah, I felt a lot of jealousy and maybe bitterness from Chrissy there, and I think she was obviously in the minority and on the outs, and
Mm-hmm.
that bothered her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like she might have gone into the game because, at least in recent seasons and seasons past too, that older women tend to do really well. They
Mm-hmm.
kind of take on this mother role, and people find comfort in them. And that didn't seem to happen with Chrissy. And I don't know if she expected that. And that was going to be her game, and it didn't come to fruition. And then she saw that she wasn't going to have control because this major alliance had formed and didn't seem breakable.
Yeah, and I think that very well could be the case because thinking about it, there are a lot of times that those older women, like you said, have that mother figure, and I don't know if that was even a thought. I mean, I don't. Nobody ever acted that way towards her at all. But yeah, it really it came down to her not having the foundation built and just going about it wrong. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think if she could have had that foundation, they could have made something happen there. Um, but
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
think she was also inconsistent
Hmm.
because she pitched Joe, we got to take the head of the snake, but then later she wants to go after Shaheen. So it's like you gotta
She's
pick
just
one
reaching
and
for
go with
one
it.
of, yeah, you're just
Yeah,
reaching for one of the five, and going back and forth isn't helping your cause. You got to stick with somebody, build that, and go with it.
yeah. And I want to defend the strong alliance a little bit here, because David's right. Like, strong players have not fared very well in recent seasons. The different types of players have kind of risen up and taken over the game a little bit, which is perfectly fine. We've had fantastic seasons because of that.
Hmm.
But you have a group of strong players that wanted to turn the tide, and I think that that's a welcome change, and something fun, something different. It's been a little bit out of the norm. I know Survivor Twitter is bored with this alliance, but I I think it's been really interesting. I think that we're on the verge of it cracking. I don't think it's going to be smooth sailing all the way up to Final Five. I think you're kind of seeing some stuff start to shift even in this episode. But I don't think that it's unfair or not right that they decided to do that.
Not at
Like,
all.
to me, Chrissy, like, do something about it. You're doing a lot of complaining about it. Do something about it. You could have used Mitch, Star, potentially persuaded Kyle and Camilla to do something with you.
Hmm.
Like, you gotta do something more than just say something. You gotta make it happen.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, making it happen and actually putting it together, it's easier said than done.
Yeah. And I think another thing, not to just harp on Chrissy, but in her, strategy, it felt like it was a lot of what's in it for me, Chrissy. I'm in it for myself. I think if she could have pitched it and telling Kyle, like, here's why taking out Shaheen could be beneficial to you, or here's why taking out Joe or Eva is beneficial to you, and pitching it that way, showing people, making people want to do it and be eager to do it versus, well, this is good for my game. It doesn't really benefit you, but it'll be good for me. And I think that was a big downfall as well.
Yeah, and I almost think her viewpoint of those strong people where it was all scared of them winning the challenges and not being able to be voted out. Only one of them is winning a challenge at this point. You have four other people that you can vote out. And what's to say? I mean, Mitch has been really great in challenges. He has had a couple maybe rougher challenges recently, but he's been really good at challenges. What's to say him or Camilla doesn't win one that's a puzzle challenge, and then it's wide open there. Strategic, building the foundation, pulling the trigger at the right time, all has to align, and it wasn't in the cards for her. I just don't think she could put it all together.
Yeah. So one more thing that I loved at Tribal Council was something that Camilla said. And obviously, at this point in the game, when you get voted out, you become part of the jury, right? And the jury ultimately decides who wins the game.
Hmm.
And as they're kind of all arguing and bickering, Camilla says, some of you are doing a bad job with jury management. And I loved that because you can be a challenge beast, you can be a physical threat, you can be a strategic threat, but if you don't nurture and build relationships, it's going to get you nowhere.
Hmm.
And I think you have some of that going on amongst some of the players where they're kind of cool in their corner and they're not building relationships in certain areas, and they're going to get to the end and think that they played a really good game, and then they're going to find out and it's going to be ugly that, oh wow, I didn't do a good job of getting to know Camilla. I didn't do a good job of working with Kyle or so on. And I
Hmm.
loved that she said that because I think in the moment that can be a really easy thing to forget. And that's such a crucial, important part of the game. You want to have jury management. But you don't want to be like so on the nose that that's what you're doing and almost just doing flattery just for the sake of trying to get people into your
Absolutely.
corner.
Yeah. No, I mean, for her to say that at Tribal, especially after obviously David and Chrissy just kept going back and forth. Obviously, I think she was talking about that a little bit, but even just to everybody, I think that's a great reminder because, like you said, I think that's easy to forget in the moment of, hey, at this point, everybody I vote off is now choosing who wins the $1 million. And if I'm there at the end, did I have that connection with somebody? So she's aware. I definitely think she is out there to play. I think if she can get past these next couple weeks and get the votes off of her, she could be a good threat to win at the end because she's made connection. She's got the moves. She's got the alliance and several things there. So
So we got into the challenge pretty quickly,
hmm.
and they got some tree mail and basically gave them directions of what they need to do to get ready for the challenge, and it was to break into duos. Now there's 10 players left, so pick it's up to the tribe how they want to pick and pair up. And Joe just kind of came out and was like, let's just do it. Like, we don't need to, we're here to win $1 million. Like, we're not going to hurt each other's feelings.
Yep.
And I'll just go through the names. A couple, we talked about it pre-show. A couple of the pairs surprised us. And I will lead off with the first surprise. Shaheen was the first person to jump. And he immediately picked Camilla. So Shaheen, Camilla paired together. Shaheen, I think, is feeling like him and Camilla might be closer than they are.
Absolutely. And honestly, kind of a like a strategic aspect of like trying to build that and talk and some or being together. I don't know. I think that was the whole pick there.
Yeah. And back to Joe. Joe said all that in a confessional. He's like, I want to see where people land so I can kind of see some relationships and some alliances be exposed, basically.
Yeah.
Kyle picked Chrissy. I think that was just kind of a, yeah, whatever, let's do it. Mitch and Star, and then Joe and Eva, shocker.
I mean, it ended up everybody else chose, and they were the last two, so it kind of worked out for them. And then Chrissy was like, "Oh, of course," and like,
Yeah.
come on,
that annoyed me. Of
Yeah.
course, Joe and Eva, they literally went last. You could have jumped Chrissy.
yeah, goodbye.
You were bad at Survivor.
Yeah.
Like, sorry.
Yeah,
But I think the biggest surprise as far as duos goes was David and Mary, because they were clearly very tight in this episode. We'll get into that a little bit, but I didn't realize that that was really something there. But they are like potentially a little bit dangerous.
it's looking that way, and definitely want to dive into it more. But yeah, they might be the kind of the next duo that is up there next to Kyle and Camilla,
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Joe and Ava too.
I hope that. Well, when I look at a strategy standpoint, I think Joe and Eva are like
Bottom there.
bottom there. Kyle and Camilla, I think both are probably the two best players in this game, maybe, and Shaheen. But David and Mary could be a Kyle and Camilla type of duo, just a little bit more out in the open about it. So I'm curious to see where that goes. But so those are the pre-challenge duos. Top end of the challenge. This one had some legs to it. So there were 3 phases, right?
Correct.
So last 2 duos to finish the first phase were out, and they get sent on a journey where their votes are at risk. Stop taking the players' votes.
Yikes! Especially the way it was worded, I was very, very worried that it was all 4 people have the chance to, or are they all going to lose their vote? Obviously, we see that. We'll get into that, but
So the last 2 duos lose, go on the journey. Then there's 3 duos remaining. Last duo there, they're just out. No real consequences.
yep.
But the first 2 duos to get to the finals, they earn reward, which is a taco dinner, which looked fantastic.
Looked delicious.
And then they split off into individuals to do an individual immunity, and they did a Survivor Classic. I think it's called Get a Grip. You just get up on a pole and hang on to the pole as long as you possibly can. We've talked about it a lot. I would love to see behind the scenes of how the heck they get them up there. They got to bring in scaffolding or a ladder or something.
Have to.
Jeff even stated that they make that challenge harder and harder every time. The footholds and handholds were essentially non-existent, if you notice that.
Yep.
And I think women predominantly win this challenge. I didn't look up any of the stats.
I think you're accurate with saying that. I think one being a little bit lighter, not having to hold us so much up. Obviously, David has been just killing other challenges where he's grip strength, like other things like that, but having to hold up your entire body weight on a pole, I think it's definitely a little bit different. So I think women are definitely a little bit on the edge of winning there.
So we'll talk about the finalists, and then we'll just work backwards. So
Okay.
the final four players was David and Mary, and Joe and Eva.
Hmm.
David and Joe got out rather quickly,
Yeah.
and then it came down to Mary and Eva. Eva won, giving her first immunity
She
win.
didn't. She didn't move.
Oh yeah, she I think at the very end was maybe moved a little bit, but
Hmm.
she looked like she could go for a little bit. So she wins immunity. They get to have the taco dinner, which we can talk about the taco dinner real quick and then move into the journey. Because this was kind of where the David and Mary thing really was like, oh, they're together.
Yeah.
So David and Mary are pitching Camilla really hard to Joe and Eva.
Hmm.
And kind of felt like Joe was caught off guard, but was like, I gotta just kind of be like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I think he played that off really well because I mean, if it, at a reward there, only four people, and it's obviously a strong alliance member. For them to bring up a random person that you're not really expecting, kind of out of left field, to push back too hard, and then that kind of looked a little weird. I think he played that off fairly well, of like kind of going with it. All right, let's go back to camp, talk it through, and then kind of go forward from there. But I thought that was great on Joe's part, I thought.
And it was what was interesting about it from David is it almost felt like, well, Mary would feel better if Camilla was gone. Like almost like
Hmm.
this is in the best interest of Mary. And I'm just like, I don't know how Mary, I don't want to say weaseled herself into, but got into the Big Five alliance, and it's the Big Five plus six now.
Yeah, I don't know how she got in there either. And she even said, I can't trust Shaheen, but if I vote out Camilla tonight, I trust Shaheen and I'm good.
Hmm.
So this was obviously a big vote for her to trust and be in that alliance, but how did she get in that? Like you said, where did that start? I don't know, and it seems like it came out of nowhere, but they are, like you said, together.
Yep. So Eva was going to grab some chips, and she got a little scroll,
Hmm.
and it was a secret advantage, and basically told her she needs to sneak away from camp to do whatever the advantage is. She didn't do that this episode. I think I'm assuming we're going to start next week with that, and we'll
Hmm.
learn more about that next week and probably just start the show with it. But something interesting here, actually, there were two interesting Eva tidbits today that stuck out to me. One was she wanted to keep this a secret, even from Joe, so nobody knows about it except for her. Maybe she'll tell him later.
I could see her telling Joe later, figuring out what it is first, and say come back to him. I think they're close enough. They have that relationship. I don't think Joe would go out and tell anybody else. So I think that would be fine. But as of right now, keeping it to herself, I think is great.
Yeah. Another thing of hers that stuck out to me is post challenge when everybody was talking about do we vote out Camilla or Chrissy? Joe was pitching Chrissy, and I heard Eva say, I don't know, I would feel better if it was Camilla tonight.
Hmm.
And that to me was like, okay, she might be starting to think I got to play my own game here. And if it comes to a point I got to move on from Joe, I'm comfortable doing it. I might be reading too much into it, but
Yeah, I don't know if I read that much into it. I almost wonder, and we obviously don't see everything behind the scenes of what each player sees and all, but I wonder if Eva Saul has seen Camilla play and some just think she's more of a threat and maybe that's better for her game going forward. I don't know. I don't know if, I mean, at some point she might have to cross Joe, but I don't know if it was that deep yet.
Yeah, it could be because Joe's real reasoning for going after Chrissy was more personal. She was
Hmm.
throwing out his name, and it could just be as simple as that. She's going after me. I'm going after her.
And it's
And ego
fair.
was like, well, that's cool, but this probably makes more sense.
Hmm.
We can deal with Chrissy later because she's not going to rally the troops.
And she's not going to, I mean, she hasn't won an individual. She hasn't been a huge challenge threat anyway. So I get that sense of waiting. Um, but in Joe's sense, hey, if my name's brought up, I'd want the person out too. And then obviously Tribal, she starts going after all of the strong alliance. So that kind of put the nail in the coffin, I think. But yeah, no, I definitely get that.
Yeah. So let's talk about this journey. So Mitch, Star, Shaheen, and Camilla were the first players out, and they were the ones that were sent on this journey. I'm curious where what your thoughts were on how this journey played out.
Better than I expected. Like I said, at the challenge, the way that was worded, I fully expected to go into it. They all go off on their own, have a challenge, chance to keep their vote or lose it. And I fully expected to see 2 to 3 people, maybe even 4, not have their vote. And I thought that was going to be absolutely crazy and would have been pretty upset. So positive in that sense. The game I thought was interesting. So to kind of recap that, there was 4 shoots and then a line with all gray and red balls. And you could pick up 1 or 2 balls at a time and put them into your chute. And then each time you picked up,
Grow
then
up.
yes, Brandon, grow up. So you drop them in there. If you got a red ball, you dropped it into your chute. Once you had 3 red balls, then you were out and you lost your vote. So I thought it was cool, kind of a strategic, obviously trying to make sure you don't have to get the red one. Kind of trying to be strategic and looking forward, but it almost seemed like Star got ganged up on. And
Yeah.
I get Camilla's stance on that of not wanting Mitch to lose his vote, the ally, that side of things. I felt a little bad for Star because you could definitely tell she even could tell she was getting ganged up on there, and I felt a little bad for her. But I mean, for her to lose her vote, not that it didn't matter this week, but it really didn't. I mean,
Yeah.
she wasn't in anything, and that was probably because of her not having her vote. But in all of that, a positive outcome from what I was expecting. I still don't love people losing their votes. I don't think that should be a thing.
Yeah. I'm pretty outspoken about this topic in past seasons. I'm very anti lose your vote. I think your vote is your voice in the game, and 10 people left and thinking that 40% of them weren't going to have a vote, or potentially 40% of them weren't going to have a vote, was, I was like, that, what are we doing here? So
Hmm.
it was best case scenario that, okay, only one of them are losing. But even Kyle, when he was talking to Chrissy back at camp, he's like, we're just going to assume that 4 of them lost their votes. So it's to the point where the players are like, the odds of them coming back with a vote are slim.
Yeah.
So I liked that there was only one person that lost their vote and there was some strategy behind it. If Survivor insists on taking votes, that's how I want them to do it.
Hmm. I think that's kind of best case scenario. And for, like I said earlier, for the person to lose their vote, for it to be Star, and the way she took it, obviously she was upset, but I thought her what she said at Tribal was hilarious. Of you look down the beach, somebody's having a conversation. You look to the left, look to the right, everybody's having conversations. I'm just sitting over here with nothing but time because I don't have a vote, and I don't know, just kind of made a joke about it and being Star. But I thought it was quite funny. She always has, I think, one or two tidbits each episode that's like, you're actually a lot of funny. Like, you're a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah. So there's two names on the block. It's Chrissy, Camilla. David's pushing hard for Camilla. And Kyle and Camilla are still undercover
Hmm.
for now. David's talking to Kyle. Listen, man, we got to vote out Camilla. And Kyle's like, whoa, 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 what are we doing here? Trying his best to sway it somewhere else. And David's like, dude, this shouldn't be that complicated. Like, what's your deal? And puts Kyle in a really interesting spot because he's like, obviously they're undercover. He doesn't want to blow that.
Yeah.
So he's trying to figure out why they don't want to vote for Camilla, and he's not really able to come up with one. But he also manages to steer out of that.
Hmm.
I liked how he navigated this. He went to Joe and was like, "I'm going to try to get it into Joe's ear, give him some info. Hey, Chrissy's gunning for you. I don't think it makes sense to vote Camilla." Joe even said it doesn't make sense to vote Camilla. Kyle wanted to use Joe's influence there amongst the group. But even when they were all talking, Kyle and David are going back and forth. And David is still like, what is your deal? And
Hmm.
I think David's clearly on to that duo.
Absolutely, especially after this episode.
Yep. But for David, I think he's got to be careful because I think the whole David and Mary thing, where'd that come from? You know, bringing in an outsider, if you will, to a strong group he already had.
And for her to make such a big voting suggestion or push,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely a little worrisome.
Yeah. And I actually think, I said it last week, I think that I actually said it about Kyle and Camilla as far in regards to the big alliance, but I think there's going to come a point where Joe, Eva, Shaheen are going to be like, you're either with us or you're against us. And I thought it
Hmm.
was going to happen with Kyle and Camilla. I think it might happen with David.
I do too.
Hey, you're either with us or you're against us. You're being kind of weird last week. I don't trust you. And I think he might get himself in trouble.
I could see it because I think in the scenes from next episode, David went to Joe and said something along the lines of like, "You went back on your word," and so you're like you said earlier, we're starting to see a little riff there, and I could definitely see David being the one that gets caught there of what are you doing? Why are you going with Mary? Like, what's going on there? And then it takes some heat off of Kyle and and Camilla. Like you said, I think David's definitely on to something there, and I think he's kind of figured that out that they're working together. And I just hope that Kyle didn't blow up his game trying to save Camilla. I mean, at the end of the day, if it does, fine, but I'm a little worried about that one.
Yeah. So the only thing that I think could help Kyle and Camilla is clearly the votes went Kyle and Camilla's way.
Mm-hmm.
David did not get his way. We didn't really see how that happened.
Mm-mm.
I had a hunch that it was going to go Chrissy. I didn't feel like this was Camilla's episode. I think that could also be the beginning of the end for David of you were really pushing hard for this. We didn't want to go that way.
The entire group didn't really want to go that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I actually didn't catch the votes. But did David end up voting Chrissy?
Everybody voted Chrissy except for Chrissy. She voted Shaheen.
Right. Right.
Um, and my question there was, did they go into tribal saying, "Hey, we're actually voting Chrissy," or was what Chrissy said at tribal going back and forth with David, trying to, "Hey, Chrissy's clearly aiming for going after us strong people. If she's going after us that hard, people see that, go after us. Do we just vote her out?" Did that change his mind, or did they go into tribal going like after her? You know?
Yeah, I feel like the thing about it is I think Chrissy wasn't that big of a threat.
Mm-mm.
So I think it was, again, down to this is the safe vote to get us moving forward. And right now, at least based off of things they said tonight, Camilla is the vote next week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's happening.
I don't either.
But overall, a lot, a lot of stuff happened this episode. A lot of
It,
moving, a lot of drama, and I think a lot of you're getting to see a lot of players kind of open up and shine since Say's gone,
mm-hmm.
and I thought we might have had the potential to have a pretty straightforward, borderline boring final few episodes of this season, but I think it's going to be pretty intense if these guys start going after each other.
Absolutely. And like I said earlier, this episode, this is kind of the first little bit of chaos and really not gameplay because we've seen gameplay, but kind of chaos and just seeing alliances question each other and all. So that's exciting. And I definitely think, like you said, obviously that riff and some of that starting to cause, I think is going to make these next few and final episodes super exciting.
All right. So we got a few more things before we get out of here.
Okay.
Hands of the Fans
Yes,
happened tonight. There were 3 questions. Did you answer those questions?
I did. Did you write down what they were?
Yeah, I wrote. I have them.
Okay.
So 3 questions. The first one was basically pick an immunity necklace. Both kind of bird themed.
Mm-hmm.
A was a little bit more classy, a little medallion with some design around the side, and then B was just like a full on bird. Like it was a little bit more out there.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went with that one because I
I
was
did
just
too.
like, that one's like kind of crazy.
I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. It was funny. Celeste was like, "Oh, this is obvious," and I was like, "B,
B.
right?" And she goes, "No,
Oh
A."
no.
She goes, "What is going? Like that's too much on B." And I'm like, "No, I kind of like that one. It's like kind of in your face, a little bit different."
I mean, it's immunity idol. You win it. The only person to get it. You gotta flaunt it. Let's make it big.
So, question 2 was, should they give players tribe supplies or should they have to earn tribe supplies? What did you answer there?
I kept with earn it.
I did as well.
I think in the new era, faster pace, just a little bit more difficult. I think keeping that aspect and moving forward with it and staying with it. I don't think they're making it easier and doing some of that. It's more difficult. It's faster for a reason.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with it too. There there's a lot of good stuff about New Era Survivor, but I think having the players basically have to earn anything and everything is something that is done really well. And that, outside of the whole potentially losing your vote or risking your vote, I think the idea of there being consequences to not winning is something that is welcome in Survivor, and I want to see it happen in season 50 as well.
The one question I just kind of thought of, and not even prepared to even look at this up or not, but in previous seasons that they've had to earn their supplies, there's been a few seasons that we've had a tribe that hasn't gotten anything going, hasn't been able to win, and have just consistently lost. I wonder if there's a correlation to, did that tribe win their supplies, earn their supplies, or did they start on the bottom? So, and if that's the case, then I could maybe be persuaded to do it a little bit different, to maybe if that kind of kept the tribes more even throughout the pre-merge, maybe I could be convinced the other way. But like I said, I just thought about that, and so I have no data or anything to look at that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Speaking of earning your supplies, I don't know if you've watched this season yet in your rewatch of all the seasons, but there's a season, it's in the teens, I think, where One tribe starts with like luxury.
Yes.
They have like a full on shelter. They have hammocks. They have like a coffee maker, all this amazing stuff. And then the other
Hmm.
tribe has literally nothing.
Yep. Yeah. I think they had a like somebody like an actual group come in, build them a full bed, a
Hmm.
hammock, a shower, all of those different things, and the other tribe was left with zero.
And remind me, was that just luck of the draw, or did they do a challenge to where winner gets luxury and loser goes here?
I want to say it was a challenge.
Okay.
Or I don't. It was either a challenge or they basically picked between two maps, and that.
Mm,
But
okay.
I want to say it was a challenge that they had to build some structure that was sturdy or whatever, and then they came in and judged it, and that's how they won it.
Gotcha. Okay. Question three on Hands of the Fans was, do you want to keep the twists or do you want to have less twists?
This one I was torn on, and I'm torn because I don't know what they mean by twists. Because I think that can be very broad.
So I was thinking with twists, tribe swaps, the hourglass thing that they did, stuff that's out of the hands of the players that they have no control over. That's kind of what I was considering.
Hmm.
And was, I'm very, I don't want to say I'm anti twists, but I'm less is more with twists. I think, oh, by the way, we're doing a split tribal, and now all of a sudden somebody that was in the majority alliance gets split from his alliance and he's 4-on-1 and he's just his game's over because he ended up drawing the wrong colored rock for an immunity challenge. I
Yep.
think stuff like that is just a bummer for a player that is probably playing a really good game and they get screwed over by chance essentially.
Yep.
So I like to let the players shine
Hmm.
and let their strategy and social game kind of be the main character of the show rather than here's the silly twist that production came up with.
So you voted to have less twists then.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I actually voted the same way. And like I said, I wasn't sure on twists. I think I had that same thought of, okay, hey, it's switching up tribes, double tribal council, and then even to the sense of maybe the journeys and losing votes and some of that. I don't know. But I voted for less of those. Like you said, I think the gameplay, if there's idols and stuff like that, I think that's great. Keep those in there, but let the gameplay shine and do that. And rather than luck of the draw type thing, it's just not. I don't enjoy it as much.
You ready for Survivor of the Week?
Let's do it. You may kick it off if you want to.
Kick it off. What you got?
This week, I think I'm going to go with Eva, and I think I have an idea of where you're going, and I totally understand if I'm correct. But for Eva this week, I think her winning individual immunity first time, obviously the strong alliance, she's there, and then getting the clue to another advantage. Don't know what that is yet, but for her to have individual immunity, an idol that obviously everybody knows about, and then getting another some sort of advantage was big, and I think could put her in a good spot, especially if she keeps that to herself. So I think I picked her for that reason. I definitely think there's some other people that shined for a couple other reasons, but I'm curious to see who you said.
So I was in two spots and I wanted to, like, I almost wanted to go Mary
Okay.
because I was like, where did this influence come from?
Absolutely. I could
Like,
see
I
that.
almost want to go back and watch the last couple episodes and look for something I might have missed
Man.
because I was just like, all of a sudden, she's like real tight with David. And I know that they had kind of built a relationship when they did the tribe swap, but I didn't know it was like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but she clearly has a lot of influence there. enough for David to push really hard for Camilla, almost almost on behalf of Mary.
Yeah.
But I went with Kyle,
That's who I thought you were going to go
and
with.
because I think he was in such a tough position tonight of, oh my gosh, they're going after my number one. They don't know she's my number one. I need to figure out a way to get this off of her, because if she's gone, I'm probably gone. And for him to, for the most part, be able to move the votes off of her and move the suspicion off of him. I know David's obviously suspicious of Kyle now and Camilla, but for them to put the votes on Chrissy unanimously after they were pushing really hard for Camilla is great. I know that we don't really know quite how it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to see how that went down. But for me, it's Kyle for protecting his game, but also being proactive and not just letting Camilla go home. And just because I think a lot of people would have been like, well, there's nothing I can do. I don't have an idol. I don't have an advantage. I don't have any way to make this happen. And he was just kind of thinking outside the box a little bit. I liked how he utilized Joe, somewhat manipulated him.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Joe, Chrissy's going after you, which is factual. And then just, hey, I'm going to push this on Joe to go after Chrissy because Joe has the influence amongst the alliance. And I think if I can convince him to go Chrissy, he can convince everybody to go Chrissy. And I feel like that's what happened.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like I said, I had two people I was kind of thinking about. I went Eva. My other person, like I thought you were gonna say, was Kyle, and for that same sense of he did a great job of navigating that, and to be able to save his number one, keep it kind of a secret. It was brilliantly done. Let's say it that way. So
Yeah.
I think it's well deserved.
So Eva and Kyle, survivors of the week. I'm sure we'll get one from Blake.
Yeah.
We'll actually get, I think we'll get a few videos from Blake that we'll post on social media
Cool.
throughout the week. But before we close out, there's one bit of Survivor news that I wanted to talk about just briefly, just because it's kind of cool.
Okay.
So there's many different versions of Survivor, and the second most popular Survivor is Survivor Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And this summer, Survivor Australia is doing something called Survivor Australia versus the world. So it is the best of Survivor Australia players versus a tribe of the best of just the rest of the world.
Okay.
And there were 3 U.S. Survivor players that are going to be on that season that I think is really cool. So Sari, who I think is the best to never win Survivor, is going to be on there.
Cool.
Parvati, who had one of the most dominant wins in Survivor history on Micronesia, is going to be on the show. And then 2-time winner Tony
Ooh.
is going to be on there as well. So we're going to try as a show to figure out how to watch that, because it's obviously an Australian program. We're going to try to figure out how to watch it and then cover it and kind of go over that.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And those 3, like you said, some really, really big players. Obviously, Sari, one of the best players. Like you said, I think the best player to never win. Parvati was on multiple seasons, strong player, one of the, like you said, most dominant wins. And then Tony, just an exciting player to watch. And honestly, all 3 of them are fairly exciting to watch. So I definitely want to tune into that. That'd be fun.
Yep. Yeah, and it's something interesting. So Survivor Australia, a lot of people actually like it because it's got kind of old school US Survivor vibes. I think it's typically a true 2-tribe format, but it's usually 47 days, which is insane. So Survivor US was always 39 days outside of their Australian season where they did 42 days, but this season, this Australia versus the World is actually a 16-day season, which is like there's 15 players, 16 days. So
Holy
it's just
cow.
kind of a boom, boom, boom. Like
Yeah.
going to be action packed. But like I said, we're going to try to figure out how to get a hold of that and cover it on here during the summer because
Nice.
obviously we'll need something to do anyway.
Heck
So
yeah.
that could work out really well for us.
I like it.
So lastly, as a reminder, we already went over mail in the show, but if you want to email us, have a question, comment, concern, or just general feedback, email us at the mergefeastpodcast@gmail.com. We're posting every day on social media. Our Instagram and TikTok is at the Merge Feast. We're on Twitter at Merge Feast Pod, and as of yesterday, we are on Threads at the Merge Feast. So if you're a Threads user, follow us on there at the Merge Feast.
We're everywhere now.
All
We're
right,
worldwide.
we're all over the place. I've loved. We're posting short form content every day.
Hmm.
Obviously, our podcast episodes come out every Friday, but we're posting one or two shorts on all of those platforms, short/reels on all of those platforms mentioned. We've loved all of the engagement that we've gotten on those platforms. TikTok, you guys are really showing up and popping off for us.
I
So
love it.
appreciate the love there. But that's all I got.
Yeah. Give us a like,
So
follow, and keep coming back. Send us an email. We love to hear the comments and just talk about that and get that engagement from our fans. That's what we're here for. Obviously, we love Survivor, and we're going to talk about it anyways, but love to talk to about it with our fans as well. So,
yep. Alrighty. Say goodbye, Logan.
goodbye, Logan.